There is a force acting on you right now. It is not a metaphor, it is not a feeling, it is a measurable, calculable distortion in the fabric of space-time itself. The mass of this planet, roughly 6 trillion kilograms of iron and rock and churning magma, is curving the geometry of space around you, pulling you downward at precisely 9.8 meters per second squared. Every cell in your body, every bone, every tendon, every coil of muscle fiber is being compressed by that force at this very moment. And yet here you are, upright, moving, navigating the world on 2 thin columns of bone. That is not a trivial thing. That is one of the most astonishing physical achievements in the 4-billion-year history of life on this planet. When physicists study a problem, they look for the underlying symmetry, the hidden elegance, the principle that makes everything click into place. And when you apply that kind of rigorous analytical lens to the human body in motion, what you find is not merely biology. What you find is a masterpiece of applied physics, a machine so precisely tuned to the specific gravitational environment of Earth that it performs in ways that still confound our best engineers and roboticists. And the motion at the center of that masterpiece is not sprinting, not weightlifting, not the explosive burst of a competitive athlete. It is something so ordinary that we do it without thinking. It is walking. To understand why walking holds such a singular place in the physics of human motion, you have to start with energy, not in the vague motivational sense, but in the strict thermodynamic sense. Energy is the capacity to do work. And the fundamental challenge of moving a body through space is doing that work as efficiently as possible, generating the least amount of heat waste, demanding the least from the metabolic machinery of the cells. Evolution, operating over millions of years like a ruthless optimization algorithm, has had one relentless objective: minimize the energetic cost of locomotion. And it has found a solution so elegant that it borders on the beautiful. That solution is the inverted pendulum. A pendulum in its classical form is a weight suspended from a fixed pivot. You pull it to one side, releasing it from a position of high potential energy, and it swings down through an arc, converting that potential energy into kinetic energy at the bottom of its swing, then rising back up to the other side where all that kinetic energy converts back to potential. The genius of a pendulum is that this conversion is nearly lossless. In a frictionless ideal system, the energy simply sloshes back and forth between its two forms, potential and kinetic, indefinitely. No fuel required. The pendulum does not need to be constantly re-energized because it is using gravity itself as its engine. Now invert that picture. Stand a pendulum on its pivot point. Instead of a weight hanging below, imagine a weight balanced on top of a stiff rod. That is, in remarkable mechanical terms, exactly what the human body does during a walking stride. Your leg is the rod. Your center of mass, located roughly at your hips, is the weight, and when you walk, your center of mass vaults up and over the planted foot in a smooth arc, rising slightly at mid-stance and then falling forward as the leg extends behind you. Potential energy peaks at the top of that arc, then converts to kinetic energy as the body falls forward into the next step. Then it peaks again, then it falls again, over and over, in a continuous, reciprocating exchange. This is not a rough approximation. Biomechanics researchers have measured this energy exchange and found that during normal walking, the conversion between potential and kinetic energy recovers roughly 60 to 70% of the mechanical work that would otherwise need to be supplied by muscle. 60 to 70% effectively free, courtesy of the gravitational field of the Earth. Your muscles are not driving you forward so much as they are redirecting and fine-tuning a motion that gravity has already initiated. You are not fighting the planet. You are borrowing from it. This is why the metabolic cost of walking at a comfortable pace is extraordinarily low compared to almost any other form of vigorous locomotion. At around 5 kilometers per hour, the energy expenditure per unit of distance traveled is near its absolute minimum for the human body. Biomechanists call this the preferred walking speed, and it is not arbitrary. It is the speed at which the inverted pendulum mechanics are operating at their mathematical optimum, where the frequency of the stride matches the natural resonant frequency of the leg as a pendulum. minimizing the muscular input required to sustain forward motion. Go faster or slower than that preferred speed, and the efficiency curves downward. Your muscles have to do more active work to compensate for the deviation from the energetic sweet spot. Running, by contrast, works on an entirely different physical principle. When you run, both feet are periodically off the ground simultaneously. The body no longer behaves like an inverted pendulum. Instead, it operates like a spring mass system, a bouncing ball, compressing tendons and muscles like elastic bands during impact and releasing that stored elastic energy during push-off. This is mechanically impressive, but it comes at a fundamentally different energetic cost. Impact forces during running can reach 2 to 3 times body weight with every foot strike. The metabolic rate roughly doubles compared to walking at the same distance. Cardiovascular demand spikes. The machinery of the body is working in a high-throughput, high-expenditure regime. This is not a critique of running. Running is a remarkable physical capacity with its own evolutionary logic, but it is operating under different physics, demanding different adaptations, imposing different mechanical stresses. It is a mode the body can do, not the mode the body was sculpted around for millions of years of daily locomotion. Consider what the fossil and anatomical record tells us. The genus Homo, our direct evolutionary lineage, spent the vast majority of its existence not sprinting after prey, not lifting heavy objects repeatedly, not engaging in high-intensity interval training. The dominant daily physical activity was bipedal walking, hours of it, across varied terrain, covering distances that modern sedentary humans would find astonishing. Estimates from studies of contemporary hunter-gatherer populations, who offer the closest available window into ancestral activity patterns, suggest average daily step counts in the range of 15 to 18,000 steps. Not running those steps, walking them. Steadily, efficiently, leveraging the inverted pendulum mechanics that evolution had spent millions of years refining. The skeletal architecture of the human body reflects this. Look at the foot. The longitudinal arch of the human foot is often described in purely anatomical terms, but it is first and foremost an engineering structure. It functions as a leaf spring, storing elastic energy during the loading phase of a step as the arch flattens slightly under body weight, then releasing that energy as elastic recoil during push-off. This spring mechanism contributes an estimated 17% recovery of the energy invested in each step during walking. The arch is not just a structural support, it is an energy storage device, a mechanical battery tuned to the repetitive loading cycle of bipedal walking. The Achilles tendon, the thickest and strongest tendon in the human body, is a similar story. Its extraordinary elastic stiffness allows it to store significant amounts of strain energy during the stance phase of a stride and release it during push-off, acting as a biological spring that reduces the active muscular work required to propel the body forward. The architecture of the calf muscles, particularly the soleus, which has a very high proportion of slow-twitch oxidative fibers optimized for sustained, low-intensity contraction, is precisely calibrated for the demands of prolonged walking rather than explosive bursts of power. Move up the skeleton, and the story continues. The shape of the human femur, with its characteristic angle between the shaft and the neck of the femur, positions the knee and foot directly beneath the center of mass during walking, minimizing the side-to-side oscillation of the trunk. This is the valgus angle, and it is dramatically more pronounced in humans than in our closest primate relatives. In chimpanzees, whose skeletal geometry is adapted for quadrupedal locomotion, the femur is nearly vertical, which causes substantial lateral swaying of the upper body when they attempt to walk upright. The energetic cost of that swaying is measurable and significant. Human anatomy has eliminated most of that lateral energy waste through a simple but powerful geometric adjustment in the angle of the thigh bone. The human pelvis tells the same story from a different angle. The gluteus medius and gluteus minimus muscles, which span the outer surface of the pelvis and attach to the top of the femur, serve a critical stabilizing function during walking that is often underappreciated. Each time you take a step, the entire weight of the upper body is momentarily balanced on a single leg. Without active muscular stabilization at the hip, the pelvis would drop sharply to the unsupported side, wasting energy and making controlled forward progression mechanically chaotic. The lateral hip muscles fire with precise timing during each stride to maintain a level pelvis, keeping the center of mass on a smooth, energy-efficient trajectory rather than a chaotic zigzag. This is a design shaped by evolutionary pressure over an extraordinary timescale. The earliest definitive evidence of bipedalism in the hominin lineage, footprints preserved in volcanic ash at Lake Toli in Tanzania, dates to roughly 3.7 million years ago. By the time of Homo erectus, approximately 1.8 million years ago, the skeletal anatomy is recognizably close to our own in its bipedal adaptations. That is nearly 2 million years of selective pressure acting on a body plan optimized for one primary mode of locomotion, walking upright on two legs across the savanna. 2 million years is an extraordinarily long time for an optimization process, as powerful as natural selection to refine and perfect a mechanical system. The cardiovascular system reflects this history just as clearly as the skeleton does. The aerobic metabolic pathways that sustain walking, the slow burn oxidative metabolism of fats and carbohydrates in the presence of oxygen, are among the oldest and most deeply conserved biochemical systems in the human body. The cardiovascular response to moderate walking is gentle, a modest increase in heart rate and stroke volume that the system handles with remarkable ease. Blood pressure rises slightly, capillaries in the active muscles dilate, delivery of oxygen and removal of carbon dioxide are handled smoothly and efficiently. This is a system operating well within its design parameters. High-intensity exercise, by contrast, demands a more dramatic physiological response. Glycolytic pathways that operate without oxygen are recruited. Lactate accumulates. Cardiac demand surges. The body can sustain this, but it is operating in a regime that clearly involves more systemic stress and requires substantially longer recovery periods. This is not to say that higher intensity exercise lacks value. The physiological adaptations it induces, increased VO2 max, improved insulin sensitivity, enhanced mitochondrial density, are genuinely beneficial. But those adaptations are responses to an acute physiological challenge, a controlled stress that the body must recover from. Walking at a comfortable pace requires no recovery. You can do it again tomorrow and the day after indefinitely. The energy accounting simply works differently. There is also the neurological dimension of walking, which is rarely discussed but is physically fascinating. Walking is controlled by a distributed neural network that spans the spinal cord, the brainstem, and the cerebellum, with relatively modest moment-to-moment input required from the cortex. Circuits in the spinal cord, called central pattern generators, produce the rhythmic, alternating activation of flexor and extensor muscles that underlies the basic stepping pattern, without requiring conscious command of each individual muscle contraction. The cortex supervises, navigates, and adjusts, but it delegates the core repetitive mechanics of locomotion to lower neural centers. This is computationally efficient. The brain can attend to other things, to environmental scanning, to social interaction, to problem solving, while the locomotor apparatus runs largely on autopilot. This delegation has an interesting consequence. The rhythmic, metronomic quality of sustained walking has measurable effects on brain activity. Walking at a steady pace induces a rhythmic cross-body movement pattern, each arm swinging in coordination with the opposite leg, that activates and synchronizes neural circuits across both hemispheres of the brain. Cerebral blood flow increases during walking, not just to motor areas but to prefrontal regions associated with cognition and executive function. There is a growing body of neuroscientific evidence that sustained, moderate walking facilitates memory consolidation, creative problem solving, and emotional regulation in ways that are mechanistically distinct from the acute stress response of high-intensity exercise. This is not coincidence. It is what you would expect from a nervous system that co-evolved with a locomotor system shaped for hours of daily bipedal walking. The brain and the legs developed together, under the same evolutionary pressures, over the same geological timescales. The calm, sustained, metronomic activation of walking likely represents a background neurological state that the human brain has become, in a very deep functional sense, normalized to. Now step back and look at the full picture through the physicist's lens. What you see is a body that is, at its most fundamental level, a machine built to harvest gravitational potential energy and redirect it into controlled forward locomotion with extraordinary efficiency. Its skeletal geometry minimizes lateral energy waste. Its tendons and arches function as elastic energy storage devices tuned to the walking stride. Its muscles are calibrated for sustained, low-intensity oxidative work. Its neural control systems are distributed for efficiency and parallel processing. Its cardiovascular machinery handles the demands of walking with a gentleness that reflects deep adaptation. Every system, every structure, every biochemical pathway converges on the same mode of locomotion. That convergence is the signature of deep evolutionary optimization. When you see this many independent systems, skeletal, muscular, neurological, metabolic, cardiovascular, all pointing toward the same physical activity, you are seeing the fingerprint of millions of years of selective pressure operating on a single adaptive problem. How does a large, upright primate move efficiently across open landscapes using the gravitational field of the Earth as a free energy source? The answer, written in the architecture of your bones and the chemistry of your cells and the wiring of your nervous system, is to walk, not to sprint, not to lift, not to perform movements that the body executes ably enough but has never been shaped around at the deepest structural level. To walk steadily, rhythmically, at a pace where the inverted pendulum mechanics are humming at their optimal frequency, where the arches and tendons are cycling their elastic energy storage and release, where the brain is ticking along in a state of distributed, low-effort coordination, and where gravity, the same force that curves space-time and governs the orbits of galaxies, is quietly doing most of the work. The universe, as it turns out, does not merely permit us to walk. It was, in the most precise physical sense, the original architect of how we do it.